This is a much bigger welcome mat than I thought it was. It's one of those things that you see this and attend this event and you're not really sure what it feels like to actually be here, and it's amazing. Familiar faces, which is a wonderful thing. So thank you for being here for this group hug. From a spirit of hospitality, I actually have to say thank you to those guys. I remember my first exposure to this event was year one, and Nick Kokonis was a speaker that initial year, and he started talking about what he'd had, and he said that Will and Anthony and Brian had put together something truly special. I didn't quite understand what he meant. Any of you who's done this type of speaking engagement yourself before knows that you start doing research. You start looking backwards, maybe to go forward. I started looking at all the videos, and I remember the very first video that I watched because Nick had talked about it, and it was Gabe Stuhlman, who's out there somewhere, I imagine. Gabe, you out there? Oh. So Gabe gave this speech, and he started off by talking about, well, the heart and soul of a neighborhood restaurant. That's what he was going on, but he began by touching on saying, how did I get here? And looking at the lineup. And I felt very much the same way. In that speech, which I started watching, he talked about the fact that, well, he had looked back at TED Talks, and Simon Sinek, the Golden Circle, was one of the speeches that he referenced. Simon's speaking today, and I'm blown away by that because I don't understand, again, how I got here. So I figured I'd kind of tell you how I got here. It's one of those kind of moments that you think, well, in watching these videos, you think of who does what. So Danny Meyer, all of us have the book. You watch his speech, and he talks about the irrelevancy of being right. I love that he used irrelevancy versus irrelevancy, and he talks about that in his speech. But he goes over and over again about why it's not that important. And I got wonderful lessons the first time I saw it, the second time just as much. The next speech I watched was actually Donnie Medea, who talked about distraction and connection is what he called it. Very telling lessons, in that he was really talking about how connected he was to his phone sometimes, as opposed to being engaged with his family, with his friends, with his coworkers, and how many times you need to just get back to that. Just last year, it was actually another friend, Kevin Bain, who'd had the restoration of your own soul. He told a very telling story of how you need to dig in deeply and find yourself through sometimes the worst moments and get back there. And I felt myself inspired. If you haven't watched all of these talks yourself, do so. It's worthwhile. It actually refreshes you and invigorates you in a way that you may not know. I know for me, that was exactly what it was. What I realized that I was noticing a theme was forming. I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be, but I was looking at this piece and that snippet and this part, and the theme that kind of came forward was I was dealing with leftovers. I was dealing with little parts and little bits. Leftovers. This is a George Carlin piece from years ago, if you've seen it. A Place for My Stuff is the name of it. But he goes to talk about leftovers and what a sad little word it is, and how would you like to be a leftover, because it sounds kind of depressing. And yet, leftovers in and of themselves aren't a bad thing. Leftovers are this wonderful moment. Cassoulet is one of my favorite examples. You have white beans and bones of a variety of different things. So you've got duck and pork and lamb, and if you're lucky, you've taken all those same things, put them all together. It really doesn't sing until about 2 or 3 days later. It is really that combination of flavors that makes it work. Every culture has something like it. If you're in Asia, you have a rice or a noodle dish. If you're in Mexico, put it in a tortilla, it's probably going to work. I'm from California. That happens all the time. You have no idea, but it's what they found in the fridge. It's amazing. Gumbo. If there's any fans of gumbo, I know it's one of those kind of regional things. I have seen uncles of mine, family members, get into arguments over what's allowed in the gumbo. I could talk over here, and they'd say, you must have chicken. I'd say over here, they absolutely cannot have chicken. They'd say you have to have filet powder. They say you have to have okra. You both may be right. You both may be wrong. Depends on who you ask. But that's gumbo. Really, what it comes down to is these dishes, these elements are ways of taking what you have and making it something greater. I remember this story. I went to UC Berkeley. My friends, we're all going down to LA, where I'm from, to actually go to the USC game. We get home like any college boys would do. We're staying at my folks' house, and Mom says, "Are you hungry?" We're college boys, of course we're hungry. So she opens the fridge, she turns around, she says, "I have black beans, I have a little bit of pork, I have some pickled onions." Of course she has pickled onions in the fridge. And she says, "I can make cassoulet, or I can make feijoada." Feijoada, if you've had it, is not something you whip up, but she was able to do this because of what she had, and it's that loving moment where she's able to do something creative. Leftovers are that thing that sing to us. Things are better later sometimes. When you let them sit, stew. Spaghetti sauce, better 2 days later. Chili, better a couple of days later. Any one of these items is it. It's one of those lessons I learned, but it boils down to, I don't have a lot, but I'm gonna make sure you have enough to eat. I only have a little bit of this and a piece of that, but I'm gonna make it work somehow. That's the magic moment. You start looking really at where these things fall, and it's not just the creative aspect. Musicians have this where they have this wonderful piece of creativity. Obviously, there's no new notes. What they do is they put them together in a little slightly different format, they make a new song, but it's not new notes. You look at an artist, the colors are the colors are the colors. Put them together slightly differently, in different medium, and it becomes art. What we're talking about here is something different, though. It isn't creativity for creativity's sake. Hospitality actually needs intent. What we're looking at is not just a moment of, I want to do this for my own sake, I'm doing it for yours. I want to make sure that you are taken care of. And that's the important difference. In a literal sense, I like the idea of leftovers more than leftovers themselves. I'm an only child. Sorry about that. I'm an only child, and because of that, my mother would make dinner, put it in the fridge, and it would stay there, and then we'd throw it away. I wouldn't actually eat these leftovers, but the idea of them really was important. Let's talk about how I got there, because I love leftovers without actually enjoying them myself. My father, born in 1933 in California, actually in Monterey, California, that's Steinbeck's, Grapes of Wrath kind of area. It's Depression era. And for him, that was a place where you had to make sure you had to make ends meet. Couldn't do it any other way. He moved ultimately down to Los Angeles. 1950, he graduated high school. Saw a friend of his walking down the street. My father was a good-looking young man, athletic. He was a diver. But as popular as he was, this friend of his walking down the street in a military uniform was getting all the attention from the girls. So my father enlisted in the United States Army. My father wasn't watching CNN, didn't exist at the time. He wasn't watching world events, could not realize that that was the same year the Korean War started. Bad timing, Dad. So he ended up going off to Korea, smart man in that he played an instrument, he became part of the band. What he did, though, was he taught me this sense of, well, I'm going to be part of the party. I want to be wherever the action is, but I want that to follow me. I don't want to take care of others in that same regard. If you will be around my father anytime now, there will be an entourage. He's going to be with 7, 8, 9 people. He's going to show up at your door with people you've never met, and they're going to be welcoming your house just because. Mother born in 1941, another wartime baby. She was born in September. A couple of months later, Pearl Harbor happens. She grew up as the baby of 11 kids. She had this thing where there was no waste in the house because there were 11 kids. They were eating everything in sight. They grew most of their food. They were rationing. I thought that was the reasoning behind it, but it actually wasn't. What was the reality, she said, was that, well, we were poor, and we did what we could, and the refrigeration wasn't an easy thing, so you ate what you had. So they got together because my mother went to visit an uncle of mine in Los Angeles, discovered there was no snow in California in the middle of winter, unlike Denver, where she was from. I was born in LA. They weren't together indefinitely. They actually separated shortly thereafter. I'm a leftover. I am a product of that relationship. And that was a realization that took me a while to understand. I am a lot of different things, but I've learned elements from my father and my mother to start. It goes from there. I was taught a variety of sayings that we all are. Leopards don't change their spots. Grandma said that. Makes sense, right? Mom changed that up a little bit later, and she said, well, when somebody tells me something about themselves, I believe them. I said, well, that will come in handy. Now, if somebody actually tells me I can be a real asshole, I believe them. And it works out. That's come in handy for me. But you use these kind of gifts, these little pieces, and that helps you move forward. I was born in 1967. It's a world that was kind of interesting in that watching TV, which I was a TV era, Brady Bunch was an example. My family wasn't Brady Bunch. Good Times was on TV. I wasn't that family either. I was somewhere in between. And it was really kind of, I was watching all these things on television and understanding what's going to happen. Where do I fit? I was exposed to art. I was exposed to music. I was exposed to theater. I was exposed to all these things, but none of them were me. I was this common example, only child, single parent at that point. And I had to navigate all this world to figure out which piece is going to be me. I don't know which ones of them most firmly define me, but those nuggets are what actually serve to guide me. I look at things like inspect what you expect, which is a management tenet. Work smart, work hard, work fast. Anyone who's worked with me for any amount of time knows that's something I say. Ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. I'm a Ritz-Carlton kid, so I can't help but. But you have to look at those little pieces and figure out where they work for you. Hospitality is a series of leftovers. As restaurateurs, as hospitality people, what we look for is sometimes the perfect venue, the perfect thing, the perfect way to take care of our guests. We never get the perfect exact thing, but the magic happens where we take what we've got and we make it work for the guest. We talked a few minutes ago where I mentioned intent. That's what it is, where I'm looking at how can I best take care of you. That's critical, right? That's the magic, where something goes wrong or something's not exactly what it's supposed to be, but I'm going to break all the rules of what's supposed to be happening to make sure that you walk out happy. That's an important part, right? You walk out happy. I want to take care of you. You are a guest in my home. You're a guest in my restaurant. You're a guest in my hotel. That anticipation of guest needs, that dynamic, that's where we stem from. I love those moments where we get a chance to connect. My most famous saying with my staff, they hear it all the time, it's not the value of the coin that's important, it's the warmth between the hands exchanging it. I have no idea who told me that, but thank you, because I use it all the time, because it really is the essence of it. The connectivity we have one to another, figuring out what pieces we have at our disposal, what leftovers I have to play with, how I put that together so that you and I can commune, so that you and I can have that personal human moment. That's what we want. We're all here today, right, for the same reason. We're here to share hospitality. We're going to listen to a variety of speakers, and oh my God, you have amazing people to hear from earlier today or later today. I got earlier this week or yesterday, last night, moments to talk to and hear some of these stories. They really are motivating in a strange way, in that I didn't know the nuggets I was going to get from each one of them. Still don't know. These speeches I'm looking forward to, because I know I'm going to get a piece from here, a piece from there. Simon, I know I'm looking forward to yours because I've listened to all your TED Talks in the past, but this is going to be fun. I have one last story to tell. Anybody who's spending time with me knows I love fried rice, but they may not know why. I was, again, my mother were separated. I was about 8 years old, went to visit my grandparents, and my dad's new girlfriend was there. And so she made breakfast. She had leftover rice from the night before, she had bacon, she had eggs, and she made fried rice. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, because I didn't know you could have fried rice for breakfast. I got home, and I told my mother that we'd had fried rice for breakfast. And she said, strong black woman. What she was thinking was, hell no, right? So we had fried rice the next day. And we had fried rice again. And then she taught me how to make fried rice. And it became one of those things that became part of who I am. And if you're around me, I'm always going to have rice and bacon and eggs and green onions and soy sauce around, because it's something I can whip up. Years later, It was Thanksgiving, and I moved to Mammoth Lakes, California. And we got there the Saturday before Thanksgiving. We moved in employee housing, basically empty dorms. A friend of mine and I were up there in the mountains, and I went to the store and grabbed everything for fried rice. It's something I knew how to do. It's something I knew I could feed us and something that was going to be comforting, and I knew it was Thanksgiving on that particular night, but we were going to eat and just kind of share it together, as depressing as it kind of felt. So we did that. And it would have been fine, but it wasn't, right? Some other guys had shown up a little bit earlier, a couple of days, maybe weeks before we did. They had already met friends in Mammoth. And so they went out and they had done whatever they'd done, a real Thanksgiving, and they came back with, yes, leftovers. Right? They had those pieces of just a little bit of turkey, a little bit of stuffing, all the things we hope for. And we sat there in the middle of this employee housing, basically in the dorm, conference room, and we had Thanksgiving dinner. Tearing open the foil, having the paper plate, and it was right, and it was warm, because it was that hospitable moment. It was that really point where somebody else reached out to me, reached out to my friend, and said, we're going to take care of you, we're going to share Thanksgiving together. That's that moment. Sharing that hospitality was it. Look for that moment in your lives every day. It can be any interaction. You're not sure where it's going to show up. But if you're looking to just connect with the people around you, the people next to you here, the people that you're going to see later today, wherever you find them, it's everything.